Hey, what is going on? We're gonna do macroeconomics, and we're looking at aggregate supply. So aggregate supply is very similar to supply, but just rather than looking at a market or a business, we're looking at an economy. So a nation, looking at maybe the United Kingdom. We're looking at Spain, Italy. So let's look at a diagram. We have our axis. The names change. So the y-axis is price level, PL. The x-axis becomes either output or gross domestic product or gross national income. I'm going to put total output. So aggregate supply curve is the total quantity produced by a nation at a particular time period. Aggregate supply. It is upward sloping, the curve, because it shows us what a nation can produce at each and every different price level. All other factors unchanged. And we can see that they'll produce more as price level increases. The assumption behind it is that as prices go up, it encourages businesses to produce more. And hence the overall nation will produce more because they can cover their costs and they can make more output as they might have a higher profit since prices are increasing. So that's aggregate supply. Now, there are two things with aggregate supply. We have a movements along it from here to here. So on what causes this is our dependent variable, and this is our price level. So price level, as it goes up from price level 1 to price level 2, we see a change in the quantity, the total output. And now the total output here, we use a Y, and that just refers to the overall income of an economy. So a Y there. So we can see an increase in overall income, which is, it represents total output. As prices go up, output increases. So again, any adjustment, any movement along the curve is due to price levels. Easy peasy. Let's go to the next part. In the next part, we look at shifts in the aggregate supply curve. So we have our diagram, we have our aggregate supply, price levels. This time I'm going to put gross national income for change. And I want to show you a shift in the aggregate supply curve. Now, when looking at the short run of the aggregate supply curve, we see the upward sloping like this aggregate supply curve. However, in the long run, it's a little bit different. Price level here, and again, let's put G and I here, and that'll be our Y1. Now here we can see that number one, let's look at the key difference between both the short and the long run. So then we can look at shifts. But first, let's look at the key differences. One is that here we're not using all our factors of production, so we still have spare capacity. So hence, as price levels increases, we will produce more, because it encourages businesses to produce more. However, in this example, in the long run, we've reached our maximum capacity. So as price levels increase, from price level 1 to price level 2, the output does not increase, does not change. It stays the same. So the adjustment is only along here and increases price, but yet output does not change. So here the aggregate supply is inelastic, whereas here in the short run, the aggregate supply is elastic. We can look at it from a PPF point of view. So we'll do a short, small PPF here. So we'll go product A, product B, and we have, this is our output in the economy, a Y there to show it. Now, if the economy is in the short run, then we're inside the PPF. We're productively inefficient. We could be making more. We're not using all our resources. Maybe we have a high level of unemployment. So there's plenty of people that are willing and able to work, but they have no job because they can't find one due to lack of flexibility of labor, or they can't relocate, or maybe I don't know, we're suffering a pandemic. So that means that we will be in the short run aggregate supply. We have resources which we're not utilizing. In the long run, however, that means that we will be on the actual PPF. So we will be on the maximum possibility frontier because we cannot make any more. We've reached our limit. Usually countries that are operating on the long run aggregate supply are known to be developed economies. Japan, the United Kingdom, Europe, because they have very low levels of unemployment and they're using most of the resources. Think about Japan. They import loads of raw materials to be able to make products because they don't have anything in their actual country, in the nation. They use every little bit of land available. And the same thing in the United Kingdom, low levels of unemployment. On the other hand, if we look at developing economies all over the world, Bolivia, I don't know, Central America, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Argentina, etc. They will be operating on a short-run aggregate supply curve because they have high levels of unemployment. So they have resources which they are not utilizing. So that's how we can refer to this in the PPF. Short run is productively inefficient inside the PPF. Long run is productively efficient on the PPF. Happy days. So now let's look at shifts. So a shift in the short run is caused due to three main reasons. One is flexibility of labor. Let's put it here, an F here on the side, flexibility of labor. And that is because if there's no flexibility of labor, meaning people are not willing to move and relocate, or they're not willing to take a different wage, then we are looking at potentially a decrease in aggregate supply. However, if they're willing to relocate, let's say the Job Center Plus has a great website that after taking your CV in will give you your perfect job match, then they'll help relocate people and employ people quickly. So that could increase the aggregate supply curve. So from aggregate supply 1, we can have aggregate supply 2. And what this has done is, for the same price level, look at this, the output has changed from Y1 to Y2. So it has moved, we're producing, a total output has increased. And that's because of flexibility of labor. Another reason that we could have a shift in or outwards is the cost of production. So we buy a lot of raw materials from abroad. Now, if those materials increase in price, then we're going to have to produce less. So we'll shift to the left. However, if the raw materials become cheaper, then we can buy more and we can increase the output. So then the shift will be to the right, just like this one. This could be because, let's take, for example, the pound appreciates. So we can buy more raw materials from Europe. So that will increase our total output. Giving us from Y1, now we'll have a Y2, an increase in output. And again, this will be because of the cost of production. And then a third and finally is due to changes in technology. So if we buy technology from Germany so that we can be more efficient in making cars, that means that with the same resources, we'll be able to make more. Again, shifting the aggregate supply curve outwards, being able to produce more. Fantastic. So that's in the short run. So short run, three things. We have flexibility of labor, we have the cost of production, and we have technology, changes in technology. And that could shift this aggregate supply curve. Again, this could be in or out. Now, currently, because of the pandemic, we're shifting, we're making less. So shifting to the left because people are being made redundant, people are unable to go to their offices, unable to go to factories. So hence the output is reducing. Yet, the prices are not changing that much. If you go to stores, the prices are pretty much the same. So we can see that the price is steady, yet the output is decreasing, the aggregate output of the UK. So let's see what happens in the long run. So in the long run, what creates a shift is slightly different. So in the long run, we are assuming that we're using all our factors of production. So we're we're using everything is a maximum capacity. Japan, most developed economies. So this one, as the prices go up, they just can't produce anymore. It's an incentive, but they can't. However, there are 5 things that can help us. And we can use the acronym FEET cream to look at those. So let's put the acronym here. F, E, E, T, and then cream, like that. So F is for flexibility of labor, so just the same as before. So allowing people to relocate will make it easier and can push out the long-run aggregate supply curve. E for education, so providing education, training, development that could make the economy more productive, and that's what's been happening throughout the world over the last 50 years by making primary education compulsory, by subsidizing education, and building schools in remote locations. Then we have E is for environment, but this is for business environment, and this is government intervention to make it easier for small and growing businesses to withstand the hardship of macroeconomic factors such as the pandemic or an increase in oil prices, and to protect the sort of the growing businesses. T is for technology, again getting access to technology that will facilitate more output for less input. C is for competition. Now, when we looked at markets, we looked at perfectly competitive and we looked at monopolies. Now, the more competitive the markets were, we saw that the output increases, whereas a monopoly, in the opposite hand, reduces the output to increase the price. So hence, if we want to generate more output, because this is about output, we want a competitive market. So we want to make it as competitive as possible. So here we have like the C, the MCA, the Markets and Competitions Authority, ensuring there's no monopolies. So we have a competitive market so that we can shift the aggregate supply curve outwards. Even though we've already used all our resources, we can still produce more if we increase competition in the market. R is for regulation. So this is legislation, and this could work either by deregulating or regulating. And an example of this is deregulating will mean that it might make it easier for businesses to produce. So what examples can I give? So the deregulation of the financial sector in the United Kingdom in 1983 drove a lot of banks, international banks, to be based here in the UK, as they will be able to do transactions with less regulation. So that grew the financial sector here in the UK. And the same thing happened in Singapore. So we have I is for innovation, and this is not developing new technology. No. Innovation is taking current technology but using it in a different way. Take into account your phone. Your phone has a sat nav, it has a clock on it, it has a camera, and you can call. So it's taking all these things and putting them together. So that's innovating. It's not creating something, not creating a new technology, but taking existing technology and making something new. And then we have M, and that's for the migration, and this is about freedom of movement. So something that will shift this curve out is freedom of movement. The more people you have available, the more that you will be able to produce. So that can shift theoretically your long-run aggregate supply outwards, giving you AS2, Y2. So more output, and that in a PPF will be represented by a new line. So this is Y1, then we have Y2, A and B on the axis, and this can show how the long-run aggregate supply can shift outwards in the PPF. So that is a aggregate supply curve. Now the last thing to note is a Keynesian curve, aggregate supply curve, and that is the combination of both in one diagram. So John Maynard Keynes, a British economist, well known for fiscal policy, which was widely used globally after the Second World War to encourage economic growth by government spending. He developed this curve by mixing both. It's one which starts quite elastic, and then it turns inelastic. Again, we have price levels, we have total output, and we have our aggregate supply. But we can see that to start with, it's quite elastic. So from here to here, we can see that as price level changes, we can have a big change in the total output. However, eventually with time, we'll reach this point, this zone, where as price changes, we have very little change to our total output. Oh, sorry, I should call these Y's instead of TOs. So yes, here we go, Y1, Y2, Y3, and Y4. And this is an example of what happens in China, or what happened in China over the last 35 years. So in China, we have 30 years ago, extreme poverty, starvation, a lot of unemployment, very many relying on agriculture as a way of staying alive. So this was the short run aggregate supply curve. So they did not use all the resources. So for 30 years ago, they were along this curve. However, now the government, I guess they have more of an autocratic style, and they're able to create things quite quickly. There were a lot of reforms in the last 20, 30 years. And these reforms created industrial cities. So we have a city in China that just makes buttons, another city in China that just makes car parts, another city in China that just makes garments, another city that just makes socks. Yes, you can look it up. So what these did was, like, through government intervention, they developed all this housing, all these factories, all these industrial urban hubs. And people migrated from the agricultural sector towards the urban industrial sector. And this is a theory also supported by Lewis. It's called the Lewis development model of growth. And as they moved, then the curve became inelastic because they started using all the resources, to the point that they had very little unemployment. So it's very difficult for them to produce anything more because they're using most of the resources. So they've gone from a very elastic curve to now a sort of inelastic curve, as they've used most of the resources. It's quite a story that is plausible. You can understand how that has helped the economy grow, and why over the last 10 years they had growth rates of 9%. Even now, whereas most of the world has negative GDP and recession, China has a positive 3% GDP, because of their ability, I guess, in a way, to quickly react due to their autocratic style of government. Love it or hate it, in some circumstances it works. That's the long run aggregate supply curve, the Keynesian aggregate supply curve from short to long run. Then other things that you can add to this for more of an analysis is supply side policies. So policies that encourage production. These are government policies that encourage production. And this could be investment in better roads so that producers can bring raw materials quicker to their factories. This could be the creation of T levels here in the UK. You have A levels, they're planning on creating T levels. So different other forms of educating, training people so that they can be productive, more productive than what they currently are. So things like building better transport systems, like HS2, so that people can move from one place to another. People can live in York yet work in London, or live in the outskirts of London yet work in central London, because we've got good transport systems, a good internet, fiber optic, especially now with the pandemic, making sure people are still productive as they work from home, students being able to access their lessons remotely. So those are policies, and they're supply side policies because they encourage output, they encourage production. If you put all that in your exam, I'm sure you'll get an A. So good luck, carry on studying, and I'll see you in the next video.